Hi, it's me, and it's the latest episode of Built from Scratch. So the first note that I've made from yesterday is to remind myself that I got a cold over the weekend, which is correct, and it becomes a little more relevant this morning as it happens. But yesterday, had a bit of a cold, took some meds, and was basically fine, so I just came into work as normal and got on with things. The first task that I did was the transcription app called Otter that I've previously mentioned. I wanted to check whether you could play an audio file on a computer, open Otter desktop on that same computer, and then transcribe the file that was being played. So in other words, do it all on one machine versus what I've been doing so far, which is to play the audio file on a laptop with Otter on a mobile next to it running, which has worked fine, but I just felt it would be slightly more useful if you could just do it on one computer, and it turns out that you can. So that was a sort of final piece in the puzzle of processing the videos, and in a small but helpful way. What that means, one of the specific things that means is I don't have to untether my mobile from my desktop computer, which has definitely become now my go-to way of getting broadband on my computer. I'm up in this attic at my mum's house. This is my borrowed office space, and there is Wi-Fi, but it's really slow. So I can't remember if I spoke about this before or not, but a few weeks ago I looked into ways that I could get faster Wi-Fi, and ended up realising that I could actually get a large data limit of 120 gigabytes just on my phone, and that the download speeds I could get from tethering that via a USB cable to my desktop computer are around 40 megabits a second, which is reasonably fast, I would say. Certainly it's about 10 times faster than the actual Wi-Fi here, and it's more than enough to deal with the stuff that I need to do. So that's what I'm using. So it just means that it's useful that I don't have to untether it to do the Otter transcriptions. So after that, I'm going a little bit off business topic here, because I went downstairs to get a drink, and as I just mentioned, this is my mum's house, and she was around at the time. I always have a little chat with her when I go and get a drink, as you might imagine, and we ended up talking about how I used to get on with my dad, funnily enough, as a 20-something-year-old. Well, that's me as a 20-something-year-old. He's been dead for 14 years now. Me and Mum, we don't talk about him much. I mean, occasionally, there's no dark secret there. But when we do, obviously it's not the type of chat you can rush. So I was there for a while, and the stuff we were talking about kind of led me to think about my motivations in life and where they come from, which is to some extent to do with my dad and my mum and stuff like that. And in particular how I tend to only be concerned with doing work that makes me happy, or is at least aimed at making me happy, rather than just doing it for the sake of achieving income or achieving anything other than a sort of general kind of contentment and happiness. I suppose I should add in, over and above the basic need to meet your fundamental material needs. Clearly you do need to have a roof over your head and something to eat before you can stop concentrating on income and just purely look to do something that makes you happy. But that's thankfully, in this sort of modern Western culture that we live in, that kind of thing is generally something you can pretty much take for granted as long as you are actually working. So I went on to think about the spectrum of apathy to enthusiasm, and how, as with all human behaviours, the best place to be on that spectrum is somewhere near the middle. And I was just thinking about how, again, in our culture, we tend to be very unbalanced towards the opposite end of apathy, to the point where, whilst the word apathy itself is seriously mired in negative connotations, any word that you might apply to the other extreme, so enthusiasm, passion, anything like that, are almost purely positive words, which I think is really quite damaging. If you grow up in a society where being enthusiastic and passionate and all those kind of things with regards to work is only ever seen as a good thing, you are going to tend to place too much worth on just working hard and achieving things. And I think it is very much for the best, both in terms of the individual and society as a whole, if people are actually just a little more relaxed and introverted when it comes to that kind of stuff. No, sorry, I don't really mean introverted, introspective. It's not, in my eyes, a great thing to just run around trying to achieve stuff all the time. You ought to, I believe, spend a little bit of time just looking at yourself and figuring out what really makes you happy, what perhaps should make you happy, rather than just trying to achieve the next thing. So I wrote a little note to myself saying that I'm going to try and raise my kids to be in that middle ground somewhere, to be their most happy selves. I believe they'll need to understand the benefits of working hard to achieve goals, but also they'll need to appreciate that once you've achieved some modest goals... Sorry, I am now just reading off my own notes, if you can note the change in pace here. Once you've achieved some modest goals, your best bet will then be to sit back and enjoy the non-materialistic aspects of life. But having said that, I don't want to have to try and intensively coach my kids to understand all the complex facets or arguments that would arise from individually on a sort of per action basis trying to tell them whether they might or might not want to pursue that particular direction. So what I'm going to actually try and do is get them to simply be good at analysing things in an open-minded and holistic way, so that when faced with any particular decision or challenge in life, they can draw their own conclusions. So that is the end of my COD philosophy session for the day. Back to a couple of business tasks, of which there were not many more to speak yesterday. I checked my slightly too often mentioned side project. Too often mentioned because it is a side project and I feel like I shouldn't really be mentioning it at all anymore. But nevertheless, I checked it to see if the directory link building that I did the other day had achieved anything, and I saw that Ahrefs have seen 2 of the links, but there's been no change in the Google index yet. I'll just give a quick update on that now, because I have checked that again already today, and weirdly and annoyingly, and perhaps even bordering on slightly worryingly, Google have made a change in their indexation of the site, and they've actually dropped 3 pages that they were previously indexing. So I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, I mean, I guess I'm not too worried, and I will just leave it now, I think, for ages, and see where it's at in a few months. But quite surprising. So I then researched a load of business podcasts and followed the authors of those podcasts on Twitter. This felt like a bit of a sort of unnecessary, indulgent thing to do. But the plan is to spend just a few minutes a day reading any tweets that those various people do. I think there was a list of about 30 in the end, and potentially responding to the odd one, just to sort of do a bit of online networking, build some connections, with a view to, I suppose, primarily, if I start putting out some content that I think is share worthy, then it might be good if there are one or two people out there who have a few followers who are vaguely aware of me. It might be a bit much to think that I could achieve that kind of awareness through just a few minutes of interaction a day. I don't know, but it's perhaps worth just a little bit of effort. And then I just did my sort of monthly admin tasks for the rest of the day, which are not worth reporting on, just sort of filing receipts. What else do I do? Checking Google Search Console, checking Ahrefs in general, checking bank accounts, other bits and pieces like that. And then I actually had to leave work early for the day because I got a phone call from our nursery saying that one of our kids has got a temperature, and due to the COVID-19 rules, that means I had to go and take them both out of nursery. So that was the end of that one. I think the fact that I did that job of researching the business podcasts and doing Twitter is indicative of the fact that I am now on the cusp of doing the hreflang tags, duplicating the site, and then moving on to creating content, which I know I've been speaking about forever, but I actually am about to do it. I've run out of other things to do. I sort of annoy myself with the way that I put jobs off, because I appreciate in many circumstances it would be better just to get on with the next most important kind of primary task. But I like the feeling of having the decks cleared before I move on to the next thing. I find it really difficult to get over that. And what I will say for myself, at least, is that when I'm in that period of getting smaller jobs tidied up before I move on to the next big one, I do generally only do stuff that needs doing. It tends to be bits and pieces, and perhaps the need is a little bit debatable. So not absolutely necessary tasks, but definitely ones of some use. The one that I did yesterday, the business podcasts, that was right on the edge of being worthy of my time at the moment. But like I said, I'm now out of other jobs to do. So when I stop recording this video, I am literally going to get on with implementing the second site. So I'll be able to report back on that tomorrow. We'll see how far we've got. Okay, see you then.